Hello again, 8th grade. It's your favorite math teacher, Miss U, with today's lesson. So today we are going to be solving real-world problems with systems of linear equations. All right, so what that means is we're going to have word problems, and we're going to have to create a system of equation for the word problems in order to answer the questions that the word problems are asking. All right, so here are the steps that I have listed out for you that you can use in order to do just that. So the first thing you want to do is you want to annotate for meaning, right? So a lot of you know in class when we annotate, we use cubes to annotate. The C stands for circling numbers. The U stands for underlining the question. The B stands for boxing keywords and terms. And then the E and S happen after we do all of that. The E is to evaluate and eliminate extra info, and S is to solve and show work. Okay, so when we annotate for meaning, we use the CUB, that's the cub, the ES comes after. So step 1, annotate for meaning. Step 2, define your variables, right? So what are your two unknowns? Because it's a system of linear equations, there will be two unknowns because there are two variables, because there are two equations working together. So the way you define your variables is you give them meaning. Tell yourself, write down what it means for the specific problem. So you would write those definitions by saying, let X be this, right? So X can be the number of cups depending on the problem. It can be a lot of different things, right? So you want to say, let X be this, and then you're going to want to say, let Y be, and then whatever Y is going to be defined as. So you're going to give definitions to your variables, because then it's going to help you understand what you are actually solving for when you get something like X equals 2, right? Because X won't just be 2, it would be 2 cups, to refer to the example that I just gave. All right, and after you define your variables, then you're going to use your annotations from step 1 in order to write your two equations. Okay, you're going to see exactly how I do this with the questions that follow, so pay close attention. All right, now once you've written your two equations, the hard work is done. Give yourself a high five. It's then time to solve by substitution or elimination. And if you don't remember how to solve by substitution or elimination, check out my last two videos where I go over the last two lessons. And step 5, last but not least, check your work by substituting. So you want to substitute your values, the X and Y values, into both equations to verify that it makes them true. Equations with an S. Thank you. All right, boom. Those are our steps. Let's get right into it. So the directions read, solve the problems by solving a system of equations. So question number 1 reads, Otis paints the interior of a home for $45 per hour, plus $75 for supplies. Shireen paints the interior of a home for $55 per hour, plus $30 for supplies. The equations give the total cost for X hours of work for each painter. For how many hours of work are Otis's and Shireen's costs equal? What is the cost for this number of hours? So let's start by annotating for meaning. Remember, C is to circle numbers. You underline the question. And B, you want to box keywords and vocab. Right, the keywords tell you what it is that you're going to do. So let's start with circling our numbers and units that are associated with those numbers. So I see a $45 here, but I also want to include this per hour here. That's important. And this $75 for supplies. circling supplies with it. I'm going to make my pencil a little thicker. Bam. And that's for Otis. And now Shireen paints the interior for $55 per hour, and then $30 for supplies. All right, those are all my numbers in the problem. I'm moving on to underlining the question in a different color. Boom. So I have, for how many hours of work are Otis's and Shireen's costs equal? That's question number 1. And what is the cost for this number of hours? That's question number 2. 2 questions, that means I'm going to have 2 answers. All right, I have underlined my questions, and now it's time to box key terms and vocab. So first thing I'm going to box is Otis. Why is Otis a key term or word? Because it's a system of equations, and I need to make sure I differentiate between the 2 situations that I'm going to be comparing, right? So the first one is Otis and how much he pays, or how much he gets paid to paint the interior of the home. And the second is Shireen's and how much he gets paid to paint the interior of a home. All right, so it's very important, because then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to say Otis's equation, Shireen's equation, just to keep my work organized. So after that, I'm going to box this plus, because this tells me I'm adding, right? Because I'm going to eventually have an equation here. So these pluses, which I'm going to box this one too, these pluses mean I'm going to be adding with my equations. All right, so looking for more keywords and terms, the equations give the total cost for X hours. Boom, I am told what X represents. X represents hours of work. So the variable is already defined for me for X. So if X is the hours of work in this case, that means that Y would be how much they got paid. So that helped me define the Y variable. So Y would be the cost. All right. For how many hours of work are Otis's and Shireen's costs equal? How many hours? That means I'm going to be answering in hours for question number 1. And what is the cost for this number of hours? I know that how many hours is X. I know that the cost is Y from my previous annotations. And it looks like I am ready to write my equations. Now, the good thing about the first problem is they already wrote the equations for you. But now, with me doing this problem with you, you can see how those equations actually came to be. So here, where it says $45 per hour, and you know what? I'm going to step back and I'm going to box that per, because that per is important. It's important. Why is it important? Because usually when you have a word like per or for every or for each, it is highlighting to you in invisible neon that this may be your rate of change, your slope, right? Because it's happening every hour. An hour is X, as we annotated here, right? So let me just put an X there. So $45 per hour means every hour Otis earns $45. So 1 hour, $45, 2 hours, $90, and so on and so forth, right? So that would be 45X as written right here. Plus $75 for supplies. That means Otis walks into your house and he says, I'm going to paint your home, but I need $75 for supplies. That is your initial payment, your initial value, which is your y-intercept. All right, so that goes at the end of the equation, because this equation is the type of equation that you could write in y equals mx plus b form, where m is your slope and b is your y-intercept. All right, not all the problems are going to be set up this way, but it's nice when they are. So now if we look at Shireen's, Shireen paints for $55 per hour. That's where this 55 comes from, plus $30 for supplies, and boom, the y-intercept, $30, is expressed in this equation. So we have both of our equations. It is now time for us to solve it by using substitution or elimination. So here, I know that I can use substitution easiest because I have y equals with my equations. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take what y is equal to in the top equation and substitute it in for y in the bottom equation. So what that gives me, I'm going to zoom in, is 45x plus 75 is equal to 55x plus 30. All right, so now I'm just going to solve for x using inverse operations. I'm going to subtract 45x from both sides. 45x minus 45x, that cancels out. I'm going to bring down my 75. I did not use it. 55x minus 45x is 10x. And I'm going to bring down my plus 30 since I did not use it. And now again, isolating the variable, I'm going to subtract 30 from both sides. 75 minus 30 is 45. So 45 is equal to 10x, and 30 minus 30 cancels out. So now, to get x by itself, I'm going to divide both sides by 10. And I am going to get that x is equal to 4.5. And what does that 4.5 mean? Because I annotated and because I defined my variable, I know that 4.5 is the hours of work. So I know that for 4.5 hours of work, Otis and Shireen's costs will be equal. I'm going to write that. For 4.5 hours of work, Otis's and Shireen's costs will be equal. All right, first question answered. Now to answer the second question, what is the cost for this number of hours? I need to find y. And the way I'm going to find y is I'm going to take this value of x and substitute it into the first equation. Now it doesn't matter which equation you choose to substitute it into. You just have to take it back and substitute it into one of the original. So I'm going to rewrite the equation. Y equals 45x plus 75. And now I'm going to bring that 4.5 in for x. So that's going to be y equals 45 times 4.5 plus 75. And 45 times 4.5 is equal to 405 divided by 2, which is, bam, 202.5. Plus 75, which is equal to, bam, 277.5. All right, so there we are. We have what y is equal to. Now, what we're going to want to do here is we're going to want to put it as money since y is equal to cost. So because y is cost, we don't want to say 277.5. We want to say $277.50. So now let's answer that question. What is the cost for this number of hours? The cost for 4.5 hours is $277.50. And now I'm going to do a quick check using the second equation. So I'm just write check. And I'm going to erase that so it doesn't get confusing. So I'm going to write the second equation, y equals 55x plus 30. And I'm going to substitute both values in this time. So I'm going to put 277.5 in for y, and I'm going to put 4.5 in for x. So 277.5 and 50 cents is equal to 55 times 4.5 plus 30. Working that out, 55 times 4.5 is 247.5 plus 30. And 247.5 plus 30 is 277.5, 4.50. It checks out. It works out. And boom. All right, so the newest part today is the defining of the variables. I'm going to highlight them. All right, so we're defining our variables. We're writing our equations. That's the new part. Everything else we've done before. And don't forget to write your complete sentence answer. All right, so